All right, today we're doing something a little different. We're going to take a magnifying glass to just one single verse from the book of Revelation. It is absolutely packed with imagery, and we're going to look at it through two totally different lenses, one super literal and one that's just dripping with symbolism. And here it is, Revelation 15:6. Wow, just take that in for a second. You've got 7 angels, 7 plagues, pure white linen, and golden belts. It's this incredible, almost jarring picture of purity and judgment all mixed together. So, what in the world is going on here? That's the puzzle we're going to try to piece together. So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll spend a moment on the verse itself. Then, we're diving into the original Greek to get the straight-up, literal meaning. After that, we'll flip it and look at the whole thing as one big symbol. We'll break down the angels, the linen, and the gold from that point of view, and then bring it all together at the end. Let's do it! Okay, so first things first, if we really want to get a handle on this, we've got to go back to the source, the original Koine Greek it was written in. Understanding the exact words the author used is, kind of the foundation for everything else. We need to know what the text says on a surface level before we go any deeper. So we're going to zero in on the 3 big visual pieces of the verse. Who are these guys, what are they wearing, and what are the accessories, right? This is all about what the words meant, plain and simple. Let's start with the first word, angeloi. This one's pretty straightforward. It just means angels or messengers. So if we're reading this literally, we're talking about 7 actual celestial beings. Simple as that. Next, their outfits. The Greek word is linen, which is linen. But check this out. It's not just any old linen. It's described as katharin and lampron, which means pure, clean, and shining, like brilliantly bright. So this isn't just clothing. It's a statement. It's a garment of radiant purity. And to top it all off, you have their accessories, zonos chrysos. This translates literally to golden girdles or belts made of gold. The text even tells us where they're worn, high up around the chest. So the literal image is incredibly striking and very specific. All right, so we've got the literal meaning down. But now let's put on a completely different pair of glasses. We're shifting gears from what the words meant back then to what they might represent, a much more allegorical reading, where every little detail could be pointing to a much bigger spiritual truth. And this is the question that just blows the whole thing wide open. For a lot of people, that literal description, it's just the tip of the iceberg. They're asking, what if the author is using physical things, angels, clothes, gold, to describe something that's totally spiritual, something you could never see with your own eyes? And from this point of view, the whole verse becomes a kind of allegory. The angels, the linen, the gold, they're not things, they're symbols. And what they're thought to symbolize is this perfected relationship between Christ, the Holy Spirit, and all the believers, often called the church, or the bride of Christ. So, let's rewind a bit. We're going to go back through those same 3 elements we just defined, the angels, the linen, and the gold. But this time, we're going to look at them through this brand new symbolic lens. First up, let's rethink these 7 angels. I mean, if they aren't literal messengers from heaven, then what are they? Okay, so on the left, you've got our literal take, 7 angels. But look at the right. In this symbolic view, the number 7 isn't a head count, it's a symbol for divine perfection. So the 7 angels come to represent the Holy Spirit, but in its complete, perfect, and powerful work, an idea that gets pulled from a passage in Isaiah. Okay, next up, the clothes. What could that pure, shining linen possibly symbolize in this interpretation? And here, the clothing stops being just cloth. That pure white linen transforms into this powerful symbol for the righteousness of the saints. It represents the purity of the church, the bride of Christ, who was seen as being made spotless, not because of anything it did, but because of what Jesus did for it. And that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, those golden belts worn right around the chest. What could they possibly mean? And this is the final beautiful layer. Those golden girdles are no longer just fashion accessories. They come to represent divine love and faithfulness. And because they're worn over the chest, over the heart, they signify that the church's heart is bound up in truth and ready for service, which ties directly back to how Jesus is described as the high priest. Okay, we've looked at the literal nuts and bolts, and we've explored the deep symbolic vision. So now let's pull back and put these 2 incredible interpretations right next to each other to see the whole picture. You can really see it laid out here, can't you? The literal column on the left gives us this precise physical image, totally grounded in the original language. And then the symbolic column on the right gives us this rich theological vision. It's like two completely different worlds of meaning, all pulled from the very same words. So, I guess that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The point of all this isn't really to pick a side and say this one is right and that one is wrong. It's more about just appreciating the absolutely incredible depth you can find in a single sentence. Realizing that there can be multiple layers of meaning doesn't have to be confusing. Actually, it can open up a text and show you that it's far richer, far deeper, and way more fascinating than you ever imagined.